Well, let me make one more statement in regards to Fallout. One of the things that's so fantastic about the Fallout franchise, Chad, and certainly this show, is how it weaves politics and culture and so many different aspects of society throughout its narratives. And it does so in a fantastic way, through the stories it tells, through the quests that these characters go on, through the characters themselves. It does, unlike certain movies that are too afraid to do world building, basic world building, and provide basic, fundamental, important context. Fallout does it in spades. Fallout constantly does it for the first few minutes. For the very first few minutes to then throughout the rest of the 8 episodes that we get. It actually, unlike a certain movie, Civil War, it actually has a backbone. It actually has a pair of balls. It doesn't mind saying some things or having or weaving themes and messages through its storytelling and characters. Like, that was nice. That was a nice palate cleanser after Civil War, which couldn't apparently be bothered to do that. Let's go ahead and get to my review for Amazon's Fallout. So for nearly a decade now, and certainly throughout the 2020s so far, we've been getting a number of great video game adaptations, both on television and in film. Thanks to some amazing animated shows like Netflix's Castlevania and Arcane, to live action fare like Sonic the Hedgehog and The Last of Us. Video game fans and audiences unfamiliar with the material of these games, I think have been getting some fun and high quality entertainment for the last 10 or so years. Now, that's not to say it's been absolutely perfect. For every cyberpunk edge runners, we've gotten absolute trash like Uncharted, Mortal Kombat 2021, or Netflix's Resident Evil series.
Baby, but look at where I ended up.
And we'll continue to get bad video game adaptations, into the future. But we are living in an era where we are getting some amazing adaptations that are head and shoulders next to some of the best dramatic content out there. And as I said before, I think the next back half of the 2020s and the rest of the 2030s will be dominated by video game adaptations. And I, for one, just can't wait to see what will eventually begin. There's a lot they could adapt and a lot of amazing content that we couldn't even think they would ever adapt like years ago, decades ago. Very excited about that. And now, we've recently seen the release of one of the most eagerly anticipated video game adaptations in some time, with Amazon's Fallout, which are based on the hugely popular RPGs of the same name, produced by numerous developers for nearly 30 years, including Interplay, Obsidian, and of course, Bethesda. I've been looking forward to the show like so many others, but I purposely didn't look too much into the production or the behind the scenes content, outside the trailers, of course. So I would be, surprised when I eventually started, watching the show. Originally I just planned to do a impressions so far review after watching 2, 3 or so episodes, but I spent the weekend watching the other 5 episodes of the series, so I can provide you guys with a full comprehensive review. And I have a lot to say about this series, but of course, before jumping into the gritty details of this latest adaptation, let me provide you with a bit of a synopsis. Mostly set in a future post-apocalyptic Los Angeles decimated by nuclear war, Fallout follows several characters as they navigate the devastated, irradiated wastelands and come across numerous dangers and bizarre characters. So, I've been a long-time Fallout fan, and I've played a number of the games in the series, including the original titles developed by Interplay back in the 90s, like when I was a kid. But I have to admit, I'm more familiar with like Fallout 3 and 4 developed by Bethesda, and Fallout New Vegas developed by Obsidian. I've always loved the aesthetics of those games, that retro futuristic look. The idea that like the 1950s, that aesthetic, from the clothes to the design of technology and things, that just permeated culture and continued on into the future up until like the late 2070s, right? And I love that. It's what people in the 50s thought the future would look like. But now it's a part of this irradiated wasteland, from the architecture to the cars to the weapons and just the music and the variety of other aesthetics. I think that looks great set in this post-apocalyptic world, right? And just seeing how like all these familiar places that are just a part of American culture, Americana, whether it be Washington, D.C. or Los Angeles or Las Vegas, like how would these places look after centuries of nuclear exposure and eventually being in the hands of various survivors and factions that formed after this apocalyptic event. And that's the other thing that I love most about Fallout. It's like, yes, you have your main stories and throughout all the the main games, of course, and although Fallout New Vegas probably has the best like main quest line, Fallout 3 and Fallout 4 stories, they're serviceable, they're fine. The things about those games that I love most are the side quests. Are the quests that where the developers and the writers could be a little weird. They can be more exaggerated. They can be more fun or grotesque or super mysterious, right? Experimental. And they can feature all sorts of weird places and characters that you can come across in these quests. And that's what I love about it. I mean, one quest line could have you trying to find the violin of this old woman that's buried deep within this vault, while another quest could have you come upon this cult of like plant tree worshiping people, and their god is literally this ghoul named Harold, who's become this human tree abomination that wants to die. It's like stuff like that. I'm like, this is so fun. And it's like the main quest, it might direct you to some of those places, but it doesn't always. Sometimes you have to explore these things. And that's the other part of Fallout that I like. It's just the sense of exploration, the freedom. It's like, yeah, you can do the main quest if you want, but you can go this direction. You don't need to go right. You can go left. And you can find a whole new world and a whole new place and just a whole bunch of weird characters. And that's just the excitement of Fallout. And, first thing that, I'll definitely say that like grabs your attention about this show is its production design and the world building. It captures that perfectly from the video games. It immediately opens, just before the nuclear devastation engulfs the world. And it's thrilling and terrifying to see that, because we haven't really seen that like in a lot of the other Fallout games. Like, what happened to set all this up? But the filmmakers, they do such a great job of capturing just how thrilling and terrifying that is, but also capturing the aesthetics of pre and post-apocalypse Fallout. When you look at Fallout, you know exactly what you're looking at. As opposed to like maybe some other games, just the iconography, again, the retro futuristic, look of everything, that 1950s vibe that just permeates. That it's the DNA of Fallout. Like when you see that Vault Boy, when you see that caricature, that little cartoon character, the thumbs up, it's like Fallout. You know exactly what you're looking at. When you see the power armor of the Brotherhood of Steel or some of these organizations, you're like, that's Fallout. When you see the massive vaults and all the huge gears and the doors as they move, it's like, that's Fallout. And they capture that so incredibly well within the first 30 minutes of the show, within the first episode. It's like they nailed it, and the money's on full display because it looks really good. It's like, yes, there's some CGI. A lot of CGI looks pretty goddamn good too, but the practical effects are spectacular. And in addition to this production design and the look of the world, you have the music. I mean, they take the music right from the video games, which the video games also took from a lot of like notable like 40s and 50s musicians and all the types of music, like the ink blots. You've heard the, Don't Set the World on Fire. That's featured throughout the entire series, much like it's featured in the games, or you can tune in on your little Pip-Boy and listen to this music as you're exploring the wasteland. Like, all that is there. All that 40s and 50s music. It just immerses you in the show itself. And then how they showcase all the people and the characters in this world, how they've tried to survive, and how you have these societies that have sprung up across the wasteland. They all have their different cultures and customs, and everyone's trying to murder you, much like in the games. That's fully on display in this show. And I think that's awesome. Oh, thank you for the correction. The ink spots, not the ink blots. Excuse me. The ink spots who have the song "Don't Set the World on Fire." It's fantastic. And you just get a sense that there's this fantastic history that's there. It's all established within the first few episodes, and they choose to explore some of it, but they also hold back to a degree. But I just like how they showcased all these different factions and how society has either moved on or regressed since, the bombs dropped. And in terms of its tone, they do a great job of establishing the tone. It's this wonderful balance of seriousness, hyper-violence, and comedy, and it can happen in any given moment. And that in itself is Fallout. As serious as a nuclear apocalypse would be, and living in a post-apocalyptic world would be, they lean into the fact that if the world does survive, it would be very hyper-violent. It would be very tribalistic, and it would also be very goofy and over the top. and there's plenty of comedy in the series, but. And speaking of this, the comedy and, getting more to the writing, but outside the aesthetics and, the excellent world building, you have a great cast of characters who provide you a wide range of perspectives on the world itself of Fallout and how the relationships just change with each other, over time, and it just keeps everything like really engaging. You really have like four main leads, I would say, in this show. You have Ella Purnell as Lucy McLean, who is this young vault dweller. And the vaults are these basically these massive bunkers that were created by this corporation called Vault-Tec. And seemingly it's where people were able to reserve space for themselves and their family, and then they can live out across multiple generations, surviving before they eventually can return to the surface. And that's what they're exploring. So many of the video games start off with your player control character, not all of them, but many, where you take on the role of a vault dweller who ventures out of your vault into the wasteland, and you get to create your, make your choices, align with who you want to align with, take whatever quest you want to take, and then, you create your own character, and the experiences inform, your character's, personality. And the character of Lucy, her father, played by Colin McLaughlin, who is the overseer, the leader of the specific vault, Vault 33, ends up being kidnapped at one point, and she goes out and tries to find him. Ella Purnell, I've not seen her in too many things. I probably, other than obviously this show, I love her as Jinx in Arcane. She does such an amazing job in that series. And she does just as good a job here as this character. I love her naive optimism, at least early on in the series, because she's just kind of lived this idyllic, almost utopian life down the vault. She has this view of this is how the world works down here, and eventually when we go up on top, we're going to apply all of our rules and regulations on these people and lead them to a better future. She it appears like she doesn't have a mean bone in her body. I even like how she ends certain statements when she's agrees, okie dokie, stuff like that, but it doesn't come across as grating or annoying at all. You're almost you are infinitely charmed. I certainly was charmed by her optimism and her really good nature, despite all the horrible things that she goes through. And believe me, she goes through some horrible things. throughout the course of these 8 episodes. I mean, physically, emotionally, psychologically, her world is turned upside down multiple times via her experiences and the people that she eventually meets and interacts with. But you could probably argue she is very much the series lead, but what she provides the show, I think, is great. She is, to a degree, the audience avatar character. If you're someone who has no knowledge of Fallout, then I think you're really going to gravitate towards her, because she herself has very little knowledge of what life is like on the surface. And I just found her so charming and so adorable, and she grows. I mean, the thing is, like, she's not like a badass right away. She gets her ass kicked, horrible things happen to her, and she learns and she grows and she becomes more competent throughout the series. Not that she was incompetent, but her naivete gets her into some trouble, and people take advantage of that. And I loved her arc, and I loved her growth within the first season. She's great. I want to see her in more things, but right here, she's doing such a fantastic job. And then moving on from her, we get to Aaron Moten, who I'm not familiar with as an actor, but I really want to see him more things now, especially after watching him as his character of Maximus, who is this soldier, a squire in this faction within the world of Fallout called the Brotherhood of Steel. And it's this organization that prides itself, almost kind of like medieval to a degree, and they're obsessed with finding pre-world technology, coveting that technology, and using it to spread their dominance across the wasteland. And probably the thing that defines the Brotherhood of Steel most is that they have these kind of like giant power armor suits. I think they're like the T-65 power armor. I forget like the specific name of them, but there's these huge suits, like kind of like Iron Man, where you can step into it, you can control it and things. And he plays this young recruit who's been with the Brotherhood of Steel for quite some time. He's bullied by other would-be squires. He lives in really harsh conditions. He's often on latrine duty. There's a lot of resentment that he has, and he just wants to find a better life. He also has some motivation because of his family that was killed, during a specific event. He ended up being saved by the Brotherhood of Steel. But, and he kind of revered them. But now after living with them, he has, reservations and things. And, he, of course, comes across, Lucy, and they kind of bond throughout this entire series. And they make a really interesting duo. But I just liked it, much like Lucy. He has his own expectations of the wasteland and what, and how people perceive the Brotherhood of Steel. And I liked it. And he's a little more savvy than Lucy, because he's lived on the surface. He knows what it's like here, even if he hasn't seen everything. But he has his own, personal flaws. He has his own things that he's unaware of. That you're like, oh my God, you don't even know about that? Which makes it really, really interesting. And so, I really enjoyed his performance. And I mean, for example, he doesn't understand the concept of sex. Because in the Brotherhood of Steel, they live in a very kind of asexual, they're like an asexual organization. That's how it is. In order to, in their view, in order to control their members, no one can have sex. You're simply a soldier, a weapon, a tool to be used, and to spread this vision, this religion, across the wasteland. And even Lucy's like, you don't know how your penis works? She's like, I don't know, but I'm not sure what to do with it. And so stuff like that I thought was really interesting. And then you have one of the other main leads, and certainly I can see being one of a lot of people's favorite characters, Walton Goggins, who plays the Ghoul, Cooper Howard, who was once a famous Hollywood actor and Vault-Tec ad man who mutated into a ghoul after the bombs fell and makes a living as a bounty hunter. He's kind of like an immortal to a certain extent. He's able to survive, horrific injuries, able to be shot and shrug it off, and his body can heal due to the radiation which he was exposed to. Now, he has a very interesting dual role in the series, and plays basically 2 different versions of the same character that we follow. And in one part, actually the series opens with this, where it's before the bombs drop, right, in 2077 or so. and we see him as an actor. And seeing him as that version of the character, which is really just because we haven't really gotten a lot of like war content in the Fallout universe. Like we read about it, like characters tell us about it, like history, but we haven't like really seen it aside from maybe like a couple of missions like from the main games or whatever. But kind of see like, oh, this is what like led to everything happening. It provides like with more context, and not just for context for like new viewers or newcomers, but for just people like myself who are fans of the game or for Uber fans of the game to see all this and how it all happened and transpired and what was set up. And it has some, there's a couple of things. There's one specific thing about his character is like, oh, that's who you are, which I thought was really cool with him. People who have seen the show know exactly what I'm talking about, but he's related to something from the games. And, they go into the fact that, like, his wife works for Vault-Tec, and they establish, like, how all the vaults came to be, and, what the true intention of the vaults, were, and how you had all these different companies within the universe of Fallout, and how they had their hands in the vaults, and, doing what they will with them. All that was, like, really cool. We see in the... in like the pre-apocalypse stuff. But then we see him as this ghoul bounty hunter character, and he's completely different. He's been obviously ravaged by life. His entire personality has changed. Like there's some slivers of the old person in there of who he used to be that occasionally comes out. But like he's you could describe him as a cold, heartless man who does some horrific things to like good people in this show, or to people that seemingly were just minding their own business, or you could have walked away, but it was like, you kind of messed with me, so I have to shoot you in the face. And it's like, and I like that. I love that. I love the dichotomy between these two different versions of this same person. And I loved obviously seeing him as the ghoul and going on this journey with, various characters and how he interacts, and I think is great. But I love seeing what he used to be like. And there's a lot of great little cameos. They do a great job of showing like what was, and it's like, oh, that's who that person is, and they became this thing later on, or their voice, they put their voice in this, and that's what we hear all the, like all that I think is done so well with him. And again, fantastic world building in this series, and stuff that people just been speculating from the games for years. That were like, is this how this happened? And they make some big revelations. It was like, holy shit, that's how it went down. So all that I think is great. And finally, I also want to give a shout out to this actor. I want to now correct me if I'm mispronouncing his name. We also have we also have Moses Aria. I think his name is Moses Aria. Apologies, I'm mispronouncing his name. And he plays the character of Norm MacLean, who plays Lucy's brother, and the son of also Kyle MacLachlan's character. And he investigates the true purposes of the vaults themselves, specifically Vault 33, and how they have like an interesting system. Like they kind of have this 3-vault system where he lives in Vault 33, but then you also have Vault 32 and you have Vault 31, and they kind of trade and share resources and people over time. Well, he discovers something that gives him pause, and he investigates kind of what the true purpose of the vaults are. And he's, again, a very different character. They set him up as kind of like this listless person, this person who's, quite cowardly. Like something horrible happens within the first episode, and he feels guilty about how cowardly he was. But then he learned something about Vault 32 and some of the other vaults, and they go into more of that. Again, great world building. But I loved all the stuff that like was happening in the vault itself. I thought like, oh, because that's always usually in the video games, like that's some of the boring stuff. Like when you first start in the vault, it's like, it's the tutorial section. And when you're playing the tutorial section, you just want to get out into the world to explore. But I love how they made all the Vault-Tec stuff so interesting. They established a great mystery. They established a great supporting cast. The majority of the supporting cast, which is in the vault. And anytime they cut back to that, it became like a thriller, like a political mystery thriller. And like your opinions on these kids, like you kind of like had an idea of like who this person was that you've seen through several episodes, and it just completely changed. Like, oh shit, there's more to this. And I love the kind of like socio-political thriller aspects of his plot line. I think it was nice. It was actually functioned as a wonderful palate cleanser to a lot of the Wasteland shenanigans, and also the shenanigans involving Walton Goggins' character in the pre-war stuff. I thought how that was all handled was great. And then of course, you know, the main story has most of these characters going after the same thing. You know, it's this mystery, this object that seems to be residing in the back of this one individual's head, and everybody wants it. Everyone's like, we need to get this thing, you know, and some people are doing it for money. Some people are doing it so they can rescue their father. Other people are doing it because, well, the organization wants it and they want to spread their domain across the world. And some other people have more altruistic desires in regards to this like mystery thing that resides in this person's head. And that's kind of like the big MacGuffin. There's always like a big MacGuffin in the Fallout franchise, and a lot of the video games plays like a big central role in a lot of these things, whether it be in 3 or 4 or New Vegas or any of the other titles. And it's a cool little mystery. You know, the thing, though, at the end of the day, that I'm perhaps most impressed by and appreciative when it comes to this series is just how it's not only great for fans of the video games, but it's also just very, very welcoming to newcomers as well. You know, I could possibly maybe see some of the material being a little overwhelming, since they do cover a lot, even in the first episodes. But I think they do a great job acclimating audiences to the world through their characters, especially when they talk about the apocalyptic stuff, you know, with Walton Goggins, but then also having Lucy be that audience avatar character of seeing the wasteland, being like, I don't know what I'm doing, everyone's scary and mean, I'm just trying to be nice, and you know, I think that's great. And the rest of their characters do a great job too of getting different perspectives on the wasteland, how people have adapted, whether they be on their own or with these organizations and factions that have like a mandate, have an idea of what the new world should be. And you know, personally, I don't have any major criticisms of the series at all. At least nothing is jumping to my mind immediately, but I did want to address something. I did want to address an apparent controversy in regard to the game's canon. And apparently it's possibly to do with Fallout New Vegas. There's like been this alleged retcon of New Vegas within the series, because they kind of established different events from the games and things. And I guess there's like this one thing in Fallout New Vegas that's like referenced that has like a lot of New Vegas fans like super upset. And I think eventually like Bethesda or the producers or someone had come out and said like, actually it's not a retcon, it's this thing, it's not really a big deal. But it is interesting because it also kind of shows you the state of the Fallout franchise in general. And for those that don't know, it's in a really weird state right now. You know, Bethesda, who owns the Fallout license at this point, you know, they're I think a lot of their games have been lacking. I think, you know, a lot of their stuff is it feels old. I mean, I think ever since the release of Fallout 4, I mean, people could go back and point at, you know, this or that and the Skyrim or whatever. In any case, the narrative started to change for Bethesda around Fallout 4 because it didn't measure up to a lot of people's expectations or just the very reasonable expectations of people who play video games. And certainly for people who play RPGs, that game felt dated and it was flawed. And people have been frustrated with Bethesda for quite some time. And you have that resentment that's, I think, been there for about a decade now, if not longer. But another thing has been around New Vegas and an Obsidian, because Obsidian, who is the developer who made Fallout New Vegas, and for a lot of people, a lot of Fallout fans, and for a lot of gamers, they say Fallout New Vegas is the best game. And I've always gotten the sense that there is this, that the fan base believes that Bethesda is jealous over the reception of New Vegas, and because so many Fallout fans consider New Vegas to be better than the mainline Bethesda Fallout games like 3 and 4. And so they believe that Bethesda has resentment towards it, and that Bethesda feels like they can just retcon this if they want. You know, and I've talked to different people who are fans of the Fallout franchise, and they provide me with different, you know, perspectives on this. In any case, like, you know, listen, I am not as knowledgeable of Fallout as some of these other people are, and so I didn't notice a retcon. I'm not denying that it's there. or what they saw was incorrect or anything, or was odd. It's just like, I just didn't know. But I am curious because just the fact that, the Fallout franchise is in a weird place right now, like in terms of the games, but in terms of the adaptations, it's proliferating. I think it's making more people check out these video games, and I think that's exciting. So, I am curious to see what they're going to do with Fallout New Vegas content in the future, whether it be the video games or the series. But I don't know if the controversy is as big as other people were making out to be. If people had started coming out and saying like, no, we're not contradicting anything, it's fine, all that stuff happened. Because as I said before, this TV show, it's an adaptation of the games, but it also takes place within the world of the games. Like the events of Fallout 1, 2, 3, 4, New Vegas have all happened. And to whatever degree, I guess, because, of course, you can make different choices and decisions, of course, depending on your character, what you play as. You can kill this person, not kill that person, etc. So we'll eventually see, but yeah, I really, really enjoyed this show. Everything from the production design, the aesthetic is incredible. I think the character work has been very, very good. Love the relationships between a lot of these people and how they've evolved. And just being in this world, it's just like, yes, we've seen a lot of post-apocalyptic content across media for decades. But, and of course, Fallout's been around for decades. But I guess we just haven't seen, like, this iteration of it. And especially in a TV format, balancing the self-seriousness stuff with the more comedic and over-the-top things. It's this wonderful concoction. It's been super fun so far, and I think these first 8 episodes are easily watchable. There's a lot of cool little twists and turns. The final shot is super exciting for where I imagine the second season is going to go to. It's a certain location, and I'm sure the fans of a certain game will be very happy about that. But yeah, I've really enjoyed the show so far, and I'm very much looking forward to season 2. But what about you guys? Did you like the series as much as I did? Were you more mixed on it? Did you not like it? As always, let me know.
5 minutes later.
I'll make one more statement in regards to Fallout. Although thank you so much, Glee, for the 100 biddies. It's very kind of you. But let me make one more statement in regards to Fallout. One of the things that's so fantastic about the Fallout franchise, Chad, and certainly this show, is how it weaves politics and culture and so many different aspects of society throughout its narratives. And it does so in a fantastic way, through the stories it tells, through the quests that these characters go on, through the characters themselves. It does, unlike certain movies that are too afraid to do basic world building, and provide basic, fundamental, important context. Fallout does it in spades. Fallout constantly does it from the first few minutes, from the very first few minutes to then throughout the rest of the 8 episodes that we get. It actually, unlike a certain movie, Civil War, it actually has a backbone. It actually has a pair of balls. It doesn't mind saying some things or having or weaving themes and messages through its storytelling and characters. Like, that was nice. That was a nice palate cleanser after Civil War, which couldn't apparently be bothered to do that. So thank you, Fallout, for doing that. Again, I keep saying this, people say, like, movies shouldn't be political. They shouldn't have all these things from society or culture and things like. Movies have always been inherently political for forever, since the inception of filmmaking. I've said this before. I said in my review for Civil War. It always comes down to how you present these things. If you, and I don't mean to pick on this movie, but Barbie, for instance, like, Barbie has that scene where it literally stops the movie. And you have America Ferrera again, a soapbox, and just lecture the audience for however long she lectures. Like, that's not good storytelling. I don't think that's good filmmaking. I think that's good writing. But you have a show like Fallout, which is commenting on American jingoism and capitalism and communism and utopias and dystopias and people's various philosophies and religions and everything, that you could possibly imagine you can comment on in a post-apocalyptic, even as ridiculous and goofy and as funny as the world of Fallout can be, it manages to do all these things in a very eloquent, smart, inspired way that doesn't feel like it's lecturing you or talking down to you, okay? And so that's why something like Fallout succeeds in doing that. So that's all I'll say about that.